We are with retired Navy Captain Tim Doorey from the Center for Civil Military Relations here at the Naval Postgraduate School. Tim, you recently brought together a group of experts from all over the world, including retired Vice Admiral Dick Wells, who was a former president of this institution, and Rohan Gunaratna, who we will be hearing from later in this show, to talk about online radicalization and how it is to be countered. Can you talk a little bit about the workshop and why you brought together this particular group of people?
Well, we've had a counterterrorism workshop in CCMR for a few years now, where we actually go out and do one-week workshops in the various countries on counterterrorism. However, most of the countries we've done it they have been focused much more on what I would call state-on-state cyber issues and also criminal activity. With the advent of ISIS and how successful they've been online, especially bringing in foreign fighters from all over the world in large numbers, we thought it's time to actually look at the curriculum and say, you know, what can we do to improve it and tailor it more for the events occurring in the Middle East and North Africa and the Middle East right now. So we decided to bring in some of the stronger academics, military practitioners, and CCMR faculty to try to revise the curriculum to make it more relevant to today's challenges and also looking forward to future challenges. So we have a very varied perspective on the problem. Some of the people are communications experts, some of the people are cyber experts, and some of them have worked against violent extremism for many, many years.
Dr. Gunaratna, in your internationally acclaimed best-selling book, Inside Al-Qaeda, you took your readers on a journey really through the evolution of Al-Qaeda, and you offered insights into the internal workings of Al-Qaeda in a manner that I haven't seen before. How does this sort of knowledge of the written from the perspective of Al-Qaeda itself, how does that help us?
When you fight terrorism, the terrorist group should be your mentor. You must understand the terrorist network. You must have an insider's perspective. If you do not understand the group, you cannot dismantle it. You cannot engage the group. And I personally believe that the biggest gap and the weakness that governments have is that we have not studied these groups in depth. And if we are able to do that, then we can fight these groups. So we must know everything about them. We must know who these members are, who their families are, what are their interests, where do they operate, about their propaganda, fundraising, procurement, their safe houses, their international partners, their networks, everything. So the intimate knowledge of your enemy will help you to better plan, prepare a campaign to defeat them. Al-Qaeda, I was able to study this group because I interviewed many members of Al-Qaeda. I worked in Afghanistan and later I also worked in Iraq. And I believe that unless you interview a substantial number of members and supporters and sympathizers of a terrorist group, you are not able to plan a strategy to fight that group.
You have a new book coming out that is dedicated solely to the so-called Islamic State, or ISIS. Could you talk a little bit about your book and what you think it will offer to the public?
The ISIS book is based on my research in Iraq and also in the region. I visited Jordan, more recently Lebanon, and also some of the other countries where ISIS has built a support network. The focus of the book is to look at the global threat landscape that ISIS is creating. In the last 14 years, we saw that the global threat landscape was Al-Qaeda centric. Al-Qaeda influenced groups in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. But today, more than half of those groups have pledged allegiance and expressed support to ISIS and to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, meaning that the current global threat landscape is Al-Qaeda and ISIS hybrid. But in the future, it is likely that ISIS will prevail because ISIS is growing at a terrific pace globally in terms of being able to influence narrow segments of the Muslim community and those terrorist and extremist groups. And I believe that we need to spend time sharing our knowledge, our research with those governments that are currently under the influence, that are currently being challenged by terrorism and extremism, including those groups that are influenced by ISIS.
MPS has been at the forefront of developing strategies towards link analysis and the exploration of dark networks. Could you discuss how the kind of work that is occurring here in this field aids in the fight against online radicalization and extremism generally?
In my opinion, the work that you are doing is very valuable because it is practical, and you are able to share that knowledge with the frontline operators that will make a difference. So I believe that NPS is a very useful institution at this point to win the fight against terrorism, because if you are able to provide the critical training and the education that is necessary and that is based on research, then you are able to win the fight. So we need to train the new generation of counter-terrorism practitioners, security leaders in a broader dimension of security, not just the catch, kill, capture and disrupt prong, which is very important, but also train them in strategic counterterrorism. That is the ideological response, the educational response, the financial response to terrorism, the educational and the religious response. So I think that we need to invest more time in building the strategic counterterrorism dimension in parallel with the kinetic and the lethal dimension of fighting terrorism.